Well, good afternoon, and thank you again for joining us for our Connecting the Dots panel discussion. Before we get started, I would like to be sure and thank our partners, our sponsors for the Mobility Alliance, Blue Cross Blue Shield of South Carolina, Clemson University, GSP International Airport, Hollingsworth Funds, Maven Construction, Michelin North America, Prisma Health, REWA, ScanSource, and SCRA. I'm Dean Hebel. I am the Executive Director of 10 at the Top. And as you likely know, Michael Hildebrand, who was the Director of the Mobility Alliance, left us a number of weeks ago. So we are in the process of moving forward with that position. But in the interim, we're continuing to move forward with the initiatives of the Mobility Alliance. So this series started earlier this year with the idea of looking at how transportation mobility impacts communities and vibrancy across our region. This is the third in the series, and we're focusing this session on Oconee, Anderson, and Pickens County. And I am thrilled to have with us Keith Scott, who is the Transit Director with Electric City Transit in Anderson, Heather Lollis, who is the Budget and Grant Administrator with CATbus, and Dan Hofmann, the Director of Parking and Transportation Services for Clemson University. And welcome to our panelists. Please, if you have any questions that you would like to ask to the panelists, please put them into the chat and we will get to them during the session. So I want to begin with a couple of prepared questions. First, I'm going to go to each panelist and ask you to give a couple minutes of kind of a snapshot of your organization and the services you provide and the coverage area. So Dan, why don't we start with you with Clemson? You've got the students coming back, and you guys, your service area is pretty clear there, but will you talk a little bit about what you guys do? And you have an interesting role serving both the transit bus service, but also as the Director of Parking Services.
Thank you very much. I appreciate the opportunity to be here, Dean. Glad to be a panelist here with some very important people. So at Clemson University, we have parking and transportation under one roof. We have about a little over 14,000 parking spaces on campus. We service our commuter students, resident students live on campus. We have a partnership with CATbus, the city of Clemson, to bring most of our students off campus, come on one of two routes, mainly the red route. So we have a pretty robust transit system. We have also a contracted service provider with First Transit. So we have quite a bit of transit going on right now. And it's really nice to see with COVID, hopefully we're past the worst of it. Things, activated and people bustling about. With that comes the headaches of, not enough parking, or at least a perception of that. Trying to make sure that buses are on schedule. We run campus service. We also have services that connect to satellite campuses up at Greenville. We have CUI Car. We have Research Park out in Pendleton area. So we're pretty spread out. We have a number of programs that I can get into, as we go through here to try and reduce cars on campus. And I'll just throw this number out there. I think we've been very successful over the years. And right now we're looking at a cost avoidance of about $19 million. If we had to build the parking for the people that we're trying to keep off campus. So there are a lot of ways to measure effectiveness, but that is one of the ways we look at it.
Wow. Well, you mentioned the partnership with CATbus. So Heather, why don't we go to you next? Tell us a little bit about the services that CATbus provides.
All right, well, CATbus currently provides a service to Clemson University. We connect several counties as far as connecting with Electric City with our Pendleton bus, We also service the city of Seneca, Central, and also we are doing a nursing route with Clemson University, and it's still an open door, even though it's titled a nursing route. So there is that connectivity between Pickens and Greenville County now. There is discussion that we're trying to get on with GTA as far as developing a route that will allow a more consecutive and consistent route that will connect Clemson area with Greenville on maybe a meeting part in between. But we have that discussion. We actually have a meeting with GTA in 2 weeks to see what we can do as far as get that ball rolling on that. As far as COVID, like Dan said, we all had hurdles we had to cross and get prepared and have preparations for it with no additional money at the time of buying the stuff. So we've left all of our protective stuff on. We've just now gotten to where we have opened our front door to passengers coming on. And luckily, talking to FTA, as far as NTD, which is the National Transit Database, which is what our grant funding is based off of, they're going to use our ridership from 2019 and 2020 to decide how much grant funding everyone nationwide will get, so that the low ridership from last year isn't going to affect the funding. So that was a really great thing to hear and be able to go forward. Now, as far as this year, I don't know how much ridership is going to hit with COVID. Like Dan said, hopefully we are seeing toward the end of it, but as far as the numbers that are piling in right now, it doesn't quite look like that right now, but hopefully it doesn't hurt our ridership as bad. And just let you know, when I'm nervous, I talk really fast, so you slow me down if need be. So we've got a lot of stuff that we want to get into place as far as, new routes or expanded routes, especially in Seneca, as far as hitting other, towns and cities there that won't service as well. But of course, the number one thing that we have to have is the funding for it. And to find funding is it's really difficult right now, especially with having your ridership down and the municipalities have losing funding with COVID. No one really has anything kind of to pony up to expand at the moment, but we're going ahead and doing the legwork. So hopefully, and then a couple of months to a year, maybe we can see some development happen.
Great, and we'll talk a little bit about some of those plans here in a few minutes. But Keith, we'll go to you and talk a little bit about Electric City Transit. You need to unmute, Keith.
Nice talking to myself sometime, isn't it? So thank you, Dean. Appreciate you inviting me to be a part of this. The city of Anderson, we operate not only urban service, but we also operate rural service. The city of Anderson partners with Anderson County. So we run 4 urban routes in the city. We run the north route, the east and west side, and the south side of Anderson. For our 2 rural routes, we run service to Belton and Honeypath, and then we also run service to Pendleton, where we also, as Heather said, we connect with CATbus in Pendleton. So we operate those. We operate Monday through Friday, 12 hours a day, 6:30 to 6:30. So we pretty much operated on that schedule. That's the budget that we have. So we kind of operate within the budget that we have. And but those are the services that we offer. And again, we started out with 3 routes when I was first here. So now we've added 3 more routes. So we certainly think that we cover a lot of the things that everybody needs to go to and where they need to go in Anderson. We cover both of the high schools. We cover most of the medical facilities. So a lot of the shopping areas, a lot of those kind of things. So we really figure that we cover a lot of the things that people are trying to get to, which is a benefit for us.
So Keith, your system has an interesting history with Duke Energy. Can you talk a little bit tell that story of and how that still supports you from a funding standpoint?
Yeah, the city of Anderson took over the transit system from Duke Power in 1989. Duke Power was ready to get out of the business because, again, transit was costing them money because they weren't getting money from federal government, state government, and those kind of things. So they talked to the city and actually turned it over to the city, gave the city $2.25 million, which was their estimated loss for 10 years. And the city took that money, the councilman invested that money. So we still have our original investment. I think we're probably one of the only systems in the United States that has their original investment. And that is what we use to match all of our funds. So we don't use any taxpayer dollars to operate the transit system here in Anderson.
Interesting. And of course, as you mentioned, from an expansion standpoint, the cost and a need for additional funding beyond what you do get from the Duke Energy for anything in expansion. But I want to talk first about connectivity. And you mentioned the routes. I think in some way, all three of you are connected, Electric City and CATbus, and then CATbus with Clemson Transit. So Keith, I'll start with you. Can you talk a little bit about that connectivity? And Heather mentioned that they're working with GTA, hopefully, of getting transit addition there into Greenville. I know that's been something we've talked about through the Mobility Alliance about, the goal being transportation that gets you from Seneca, which is their furthest point, to Anderson, up through Pickens into Greenville, and then up to Spartanburg, and hopefully beyond to Cherokee and Union. But obviously you have to start small. Can you talk a little bit about how you all built the relationship to be able to have those connections, and what you see as the benefits, and then as the future possibilities? And I'll start with you and let everybody else talk as well.
Okay, and and I think Anderson County started with CATbus back in the early 2001, and it was it kind of started out as what was framed 4U Transit, which was kind of for the 4 universities, for Clemson University, for Southern Wesleyan, I guess, and Anderson University, and Tri-County Technical College. So it was started that way. CATbus actually came to Anderson to begin with, and connected with our route at the uppermost point of Anderson at the Walmart there. And they operated till probably, Heather, you might remember 2011, 2012, maybe.
I wasn't on board yet by that point.
Do what?
I wasn't there yet, so I'm not sure.
That's right. You're not that old, are you? So anyway, the Anderson County used some funding they got through a grant to kind of operate that. After the grant went away, they wanted to start charging a fare to kind of help with the cost and those kind of things. And CATbus just wasn't set up for charging fares, and that's not what they normally do. They run a fare-free service, so it kind of adjusted the routes a little bit, and we changed the connection to Pendleton instead of Anderson. And to be honest with you, it's been a wonderful thing for the folks of Anderson being able to connect up in Pendleton and go to Tri-County Tech, go to Clemson University, go to Central, connect to the Seneca system and go into Seneca. To be honest with you, the connection, in my opinion, is really where it is. If you've got some systems that are able to do that, it really opens up a lot of things. A lot of us all have same restaurant, same shopping, all those kind of things, but it's always fun to go somewhere else and do a little something different. So it's getting the information from our riders. A lot of them enjoy going up to the Clemson area and enjoying a little bit of a different scenery.
Now, Dan, you guys obviously have a little bit of a different situation with your clientele is your students, but I would think connectivity and giving them a chance to be able to go into town and do their shopping and things is important as well.
Absolutely. And, I appreciate what Keith said as far as the history here. And I neglected to give him credit for reducing cars on campus, because I know there is a connection with Anderson and the Pendleton route. So thank you, Keith.
Yeah.
Our focus is mainly on students. The main focus is getting them here to campus for class. But there are some services during the course of the day. Students can leave campus and go shopping. We've worked with CATbus. They have a route that goes out to Walmart. We have other services that we have provided to students. For example, holiday airport shuttles. So we actually do that ourselves. Our transit funds come mainly from the transit fee that's charged to students. It's $40 a semester for students that live on campus, and I think it's $57 for those that are off campus, which is our bigger costs. But we have a lot of different ways for students to get around. So when holidays happen, they would normally have to charter a private service to get to airports. We actually do that by a reservation system. So that's kind of a selling point to parents and students when they're coming to Clemson. They don't need to bring a car. If you need to get to the airport, we'll get you there for the holidays. We have a lot of different options for people to get to campus and actually get off campus. We don't purely rely on the transit system. We have a car sharing program on campus. We use Zipcar. We have a bike sharing program. We have park and ride, discounted parking for people to park off campus. We've incentivized for employees. Previously, we've incentivized employees not bringing cars by paying for meal plans for them so they don't have to go out for lunch. So we really look at the holistic part of the university. We have a lot of different things going on, a lot of different clientele, a lot of different needs. We do our best to try and meet their needs. The biggest pluses for us have been the connections out to Greenville. Early on when I got here, there was really no service there, and I was asked by the chief of staff at the university to see what we could do to try and get service going. We ended up partnering with Greenville Transit Authority, who used to come down from CUI car to the campus and bring students back and forth to class. We still are in partnership with GTA. We have a circulator route from Greenville area, from the CUI car route that brings students to their apartment areas and around Greenville. So we've made a pretty convenient connection for them to go back and forth. Surprisingly, a lot of our faculty use that Tiger commute route. So we've reduced quite a few cars coming to campus. Just hop on the bus. The CUI car has a public garage there. There's no charge to parking there. So, just park in there, jump on the bus, come down to Clemson. So we run service throughout the day, 5 days a week for that. We've also leased off-campus parking lots to try and get folks off campus and set up different transit operations from there. So, we're really trying to move people around without them having to use their car. So the main thing that we're trying to do is reduce the need for cars on campus. We are faced with student enrollment increases and proportionate faculty and staff population increasing. We have a lot of schools going through this pedestrianization and expansion of campus. It's reducing our convenient supply of parking. So how else do you get here? So we're really trying to change behavior. We need to reduce the need for car travel on campus to decrease that parking demand. And change of behavior is a challenge. And we try to incentivize things and try to create alternatives. Education and exposure to transportation options beyond a single occupancy vehicle is the challenge. So there's a number of different ways that we attempted to do that. And I think we've been very, very successful. But as far as regional connections, we work with all of our partners and we try to basically incentivize those connections. We're working on gamification. We've been able to track students and faculty and staff on our buses. So we're trying to see if we can work with the city of Clemson, and Heather's aware of this. We're not there yet, but being able to have students opt in and get credit for getting on the bus versus another way to come to the campus and reward them, maybe, with an iPad or something, some top 10 riders of the year or the month, we can provide opportunities to reward them for using transit. One of the things that I think we're most concerned about is the lack of a bike infrastructure coming to campus. We have a bike share program on campus, but we really need the infrastructure to improve outside the campus for students to be safe and get on bikes coming to campus. So we have somewhat of an infrastructure, but I know we're working on that with the Green Crescent Trail and some other initiatives that the city is working on as well. Just trying to create that bike connection to reduce any even more cars off the roadways.
Sure. And Dan, I want to follow up with a question about, as you mentioned, Clemson has really, especially with some of the housing and things, expanded beyond the traditional university, scope. And how did those conversations work with your office, with the parking and transportation services? Was it one of those where they decided they're going to build these things and they started working on it, and then they brought you in and said, okay, how do we connect? Or were you all involved initially in some of those conversations about, okay, we're looking at this area, how can we bring transit into it, and what is that role? How were you all incorporated into the strategic planning at the university?
Sure. We have worked very, very closely with CATbus over the years. I've been here almost 10 years now. And, we've seen things more from, having 30-minute service to getting us to 15-minute service. I think one of the things that's really driven our relationship and the effectiveness of the programs is looking at the data to be able to efficiently move people around. We're limited in funds that we receive. We do have the benefit of the grant opportunities with CATbus, which has been tremendous. And we get a lot more bang for our buck when we provide that matching funds. But trying to leverage the grant dollars and try to leverage, what are we bringing in from our transit fee and what can we afford to pay for? And where do we need to pick people up from? We made some changes a few years ago where the CATbus red route went all the way out to Southern Wesleyan, and there wasn't much ridership out there. And there was a lot of complaints about the length of time it took when you got on the bus and how long it took to get to Clemson. So we've devised a couple of different plans with them. And we've actually shortened the route. And on certain days of the week, CATbus will run out there, and they run to connect that portion to the main trunk of the red route. But we've leveraged a lot of the dollars by using the data and working with CATbus to see if this makes sense. Can they do it? I mean, right now we're running 15-minute service at peak hours. We are seeing a little bit of dip in transit, but having 15-minute service is a really good incentive for people to try and get on the bus. There's been discussions about regional connections. There are connections from Seneca to Clemson, from Anderson, Pendleton. So I mean, we're watching those closely to try and see if there's any room for expansion. One of the things that has helped us in the last few years is there's been a lot of housing built within walking distance of the university downtown. So that actually decreased transit ridership, which wasn't necessarily a bad thing. It took a little bit of the congestion off the buses, but that became something that helped us, with reducing cars on campus. So kids were not driving or even taking the bus. So that's been very valuable to be able to look at that and see what the impacts are going to be over a period of time. I think we're growing back into the transit system with COVID happening last year. We're going to grow back into transit. People are going to get back on the bus as they feel more safe. I'm a little surprised at the numbers, but it's going to take a while for us to grow back into it. I think people need to get a comfort level for us to get back into it.
And
when they see the traffic that they're going to have to encounter, which we're seeing now, they're going to think twice about driving a car to campus.
Absolutely. And we'll talk about those numbers in a minute. But Heather, I want to talk to you a little bit about specifically the Seneca route. I think that is really neat. For those who are not familiar, Seneca, the Seneca system, which is part of or run by CATbus, was technically the first city system in the United States to be all electric. So certainly an environmental friendly situation. Can you talk a little bit, Heather, about the expansion when you guys went into Seneca, and now even beyond Seneca, you all, I believe it's half your fleet or more is electric buses. Can you talk kind of a little bit about those things?
Yeah, sure. The first 5, 6 electric buses that were bought in Seneca was once again before my time, but they're actually written into their RFP was that at midlife that they were going to have new batteries, and at this point in time, the batteries haven't degraded enough to even warrant a replacement. So that's props to Proterra for their batteries. Now, as far as us, we have bought 10 electric buses about a year and a half, 2 years ago. We got 10 depot chargers and then 1 overhead in Clemson, and they seem to be running fine. Of course, you know, with anything, you're going to have some kinks and such. The only problem that we have that we don't foresee being able to go 100% electric is because we're part of a emergency management type of program, so that we're supposed to be able to, if there's a meltdown up this way, we're supposed to get people to the coast or to other locations. And with an electric bus, we can maybe get you there, but we wouldn't be able to get you back. So that's the only reason why we don't foresee going 100%. But I think even at 50% is a huge accomplishment, just because if you look at what you're decreasing, what you're doing to the environment and such like that. And just like Dan said, it would be great to figure out a better way to have more safe biking and within the city of Clemson. And so if Dan wants to throw us in at any point in time to come over and talk about it, that as far as the transit side and any transit grant funding that we can get for biking, let me know, Dan. But it would be great to see the city of Clemson go more green as far as not just their 10 electric buses and their connectivity with Seneca as far as electric goes, but also on bike and having safe pedestrian traffic as far as them being able to get back and forth without necessarily getting on transit, which I want them to get on transit, so that way more grant dollars for us. But it would look better for the city as a whole if we can get more of those type projects underway.
Right. Well, and that's a good segue. You know, certainly transportation, whether it being bus or walking or cycling or cars, they all play a role in creating a sense of place. And Dan, you mentioned the increase in the number of apartments that have been built within a walking distance of Clemson, and in Anderson, there's a lot of things being built near the downtown area as well, and certainly the city of Clemson. So what do you guys see in terms of, you know, how do you incorporate the walking and biking in a safe way? I think we all know that South Carolina is one of the most dangerous states in the country for pedestrians. And, you know, how have you all incorporated to make sure that those who are choosing walking or biking are able to be safe?
Dean, let me speak first on the walking part of this. The university is very concerned about pedestrian safety. A lot of studies have been done. Most of the housing that's adjacent to the university off campus, and even one of our campus facilities is across the street from the university. So a lot of students have to walk across 93 Walter T. Cox Boulevard to get here from downtown and from our Douthit student resident facility that has a couple thousand, maybe 1,000, 1,500 students in it. I don't know the exact number, but there's a lot of movement back and forth. So the Board of Trustees here was very concerned about that. A lot of studies were done. We wanted to ensure that they were as safe as possible. So some traffic mitigation things that have taken place here is some enhanced signaling and the biggest, I have to say, I've worked in New York, Chicago, and Boston, the biggest speed humps that I've ever seen in my life. And I know Heather will complain about them because the buses have to go over them, but it really has calmed traffic down quite a bit. So that's a main.
I have to drive over those things, and you got to be going 5 miles an hour.
It's crazy. I know, they're big. They serve their purpose, but you know, the first time over them, you don't realize the impact. But people have learned. Traffic has slowed down a little bit. We're able to get students across the street safely. We have a new business school that's on the other side of the street, so people are going back and forth both ways. So that's been a very important aspect. that the university's been focused on. Biking is a little bit different. We really, we're at the kind of the mercy of the city. The city owns the roadways outside of the university. So we've been working with Todd Stedman and planning, and we have a Joint City University Advisory Board Transportation Committee that we're talking about biking and trying to enhance that. I think that's going to be a big play for us as we go forward. One of the things that's happened also, and I know CATbus wasn't initially happy about this, some of the facilities, some of the apartment facilities off campus have actually created their own transit service. So as an amenity for students to get to Clemson, they provide their own transit service. It's taken a little bit of ridership from the public system, but that's less cars coming to campus, and that helps us on our side. So that has helped us as well. I neglected to mention we have a real hybrid system here, so we take full advantage of CATbus's services. Any of the public services are out there. We have contracted services with them. We have 24, 25 buses of our own that we run. We have a lot of cutaways. We don't necessarily have to run big buses, so we kind of right size the fleet for the type of route that we're running. And then we have a contracted service with First Transit. So, we rely on everything that's in the deck of cards. We use every tool we can to try and reduce cars on campus. And I think we've been pretty effective over the years.
And Dan, I would assume that on the 5 or 6 Saturdays when Clemson becomes the center of the universe for college football, that all of those components are used for getting people to and from the university.
Yeah, the university, we don't generally get involved in the main part of game day, but we do provide transit services. A CATbus is operating around town. There's separate services from separate lots, satellite lots that are created off campus for folks to get in. It's a pretty organized effort. Everything goes out the window. It's just game day operations are game day operations. I think it runs pretty flawlessly, if you ask me.
Great. So Keith, can you talk a little bit about kind of in addition to the public transit, which I know is your focus, but in Anderson, how have you all connected kind of the public transit with walkability and bikeability and things of that nature? You got to unmute again, Keith.
Hate that button.
Come on,
But
Mr.
anyway.
Scott.
So all of our buses are equipped with the bike racks and things like that. So with a lot of the walking trails and everything, around the city area, especially, they're able to kind of get on and bring their bikes along for the ride and that kind of thing to move along. I know there's a lot of discussion that's going on in the city and the county as far as the trails that they're putting together. But in my opinion, there's not enough, as Dan said, there's not enough of the biking infrastructure that's there to really, in my opinion, protect those folks from a lot of the traffic that's out there. We certainly want to be a part of that, and hopefully as those discussions go along, they'll bring us in and we can have more discussions on that. But more of the trails are coming along, and I think as that's happening, they see our ability to be able to help the folks with the bikes get from here to there. I think that'll certainly encourage that conversation to continue.
Keith, before we move on, I did want to mention, we mentioned the electric buses that CATbus has. You all I don't think have any electric buses, but you do have non-diesel buses. Can you talk a little bit about your natural gas vehicles?
Yeah, we run the compressed natural gas vehicles. So we have 8 vehicles. So we're at 50% natural gas, 50% diesel. So we have 2 more new buses coming at the end of the year, and that'll put us at 5 CNG buses and 4 diesel buses. So we run our compressed natural gas buses in our more dense areas around town to keep a lot of the pollution out of the residential areas and those kind of things as much as we can. And then the diesel buses are a little bit more efficient to run those longer routes over to Pendleton, Belton, Honea Path, and those type of things. So we certainly are trying to be in tune with our part of saving the environment and reducing our carbon footprint as much as we can. So the electric buses for us, we would have had to buy 2 buses for a route instead of 1 because 1 would not go our full day. So that's why we made the decision to do the compressed natural gas instead. I like both and would have loved to do some of the electric buses, but the CNG made more sense for us, especially with Piedmont Natural Gas building the filling station just a mile from us, so which was part of that decision as well.
Mm-hmm. So we have about 15 minutes left. If anyone has any questions they would like to put in the chat, please do so. But I want to talk a little bit about looking towards the future. Obviously, we've heard challenges. Funding is always a challenge, certainly. But as we look towards the next 10, 15, 20 years, our region grew quite a bit during the last census. The numbers that we're just now kind of looking at and getting a better understanding of as it relates to the movement of people in your communities, which is what you guys all are focusing on. Can you each take a minute and tell us what kind of some of your long-term, what you're looking at doing in terms of down the road in response to the continued growth? And I know with COVID, we've seen a decrease of numbers a little bit, but as Dan said, we expect over time that will increase again. Heather, can we start with you? What are some of the things that CATbus is focusing on as you're looking towards the next 5 and 10 years of expansion and continued growth in the part of the region where you guys are located?
Yeah, as far as us, it's like before, as far as expanding the routes and getting better connectivity, like as of right now, there's the iCar route that Dan talked about. But, as far as Liberty and Easley, Powdersville, those type areas, they don't get serviced. Even if you have the 1 bus going through, I don't think that's enough. And I know that both those areas have expressed interest in having a transit system, but I don't think they have the resources to actually come up with their own. So that's why they're wanting to have talks with us and Greenlink to try to help out as far as that's concerned. So that's one of the discussions we're going to have when we meet with James and Kaylee with GTA in a couple of weeks, is figure out, okay, how much it's going to cost us and what we can offset until they can get ready. Because as of right now, grant dollars is 3 years out. So your ridership for those routes will not count toward any additional grant dollars for 3 years. So that's kind of a pickle you get in as far as trying to expand on routes, because you have to run a route for 3 years to see how it's going to affect your grant dollars. So it's really hard to be able to start a new route and tell people, okay, you've got to pay 100% up front for this, because most people can't do that, and especially not for 3 years before they can see a reward in grant dollars. So that's one thing that we're trying to get accomplished. And as far as in Seneca, Walhalla is wanting service, and that's been going on for a couple of years now. But once again, it comes down to the dollar. So our main focus right now is expanding, having better connectivity with the same use with Greenville, which is our same UZA as far as FTA is concerned. I think that will look very promising in future applications for stuff such as for low nose and such, that these two large urban transit agencies are working together to have connectivity in their service areas. It's a nice tidbit to put into a grant application as far as for FTA to look at, because it's not just benefiting one transit agency. If they were to reward the grant dollars to both of us or just one, it's actually having an effect on both at the same time. So our main focus is just expanding, get where the ridership is and where we're needed. So as far as that's about the only thing. And as far as increasing, like Dan said, the pedestrian safety with the city, we have put up extra bus shelters this past year to help with passenger stations as far as them waiting on buses and the higher ridership areas, which we looked at that with Clemson University, and we established what 3 locations were the highest points, and that's where we put shelters up. So hopefully we can do that again next year whenever hopefully ridership is more realistic than what it has been in this past year because of COVID.
Great. And Keith, I'm going to turn to you, but we have a question in chat asking about, are there routes in place that transport people to the major employers? And we really haven't talked specifically about who, where most of the routes go to. We mentioned, of course, obviously with Clemson, it's students and then healthcare and things. But can you talk a little bit about what is the role of Electric City as it relates to getting people to work? And then as you look towards the future, what are the things your emphasis is working with employers? One of the things you're looking at down the road?
Yeah, we do go to a lot of the major employers here in Anderson. As I said earlier, we try to cover a lot of the areas here in Anderson that people need to go. So we actually go out to Masters Boulevard, where Electrolux, First Quality, Paper are, who are 2 large employers here. Our Pendleton route that we go to Pendleton actually goes by the Anthrax facility there on Highway 76. Our Belton and Honeypath route actually covers about 20 to 23 businesses that are along that route that have openings for jobs and those kind of things. The Temkin plant in between Honeypath and Belton is there. So we do cover a lot of those areas. One of the expansion talks that we're having with Anderson County is Highway 81 corridor, which would then go out to the Bosch plant, the Walgreens distribution center, TTI plant, and those that are out there. So we feel like we cover a lot of the major employers here in Anderson. There's a few more that we're missing, and I think some of that conversation about the 81 corridor will certainly open that up.
And, and Dan mentioned in Clemson, they have 15-minute headway for most of their routes. I know in Greenville and Spartanburg, it's a challenge to be, less than 30 or 60 minutes. In Anderson, what is your headway for your routes, and how? And you mentioned you guys are only servicing Monday to Friday right now. Obviously, there are people who work on the weekends, especially in service industries. That all gets back to funding, but are there, long-term conversations about, understanding that, to really meet the needs of employees, you have to be able to expand some of those services. Plus, you mentioned 81, which I think obviously is a major corridor, but how does you want to make it where people want to ride the bus because it's quick and easy and they don't have to worry about a car and all those things, but obviously, funding plays a role in that. How have you talked about how to get to a service level that that can better meet the needs beyond what you guys are doing now?
Yeah, unfortunately in Anderson, our headways are an hour. So we are not able to do 30-minute or 15-minute headways. Going to a 30-minute headway here would double the route budget. So not to mention have to hire new drivers, which we're all kind of struggling with being able to do. I know we hate to even mention that because it just, I'm driving just about every other day just to kind of keep things going. And I'm sure everybody in Clemson is doing the same thing. But, if we want to change what public transit is in our area, we want to change the face of it. It can't just be our headways, because if it's our headways, then the people that are going to take it as an alternative are just not going to take it because they're not going to have time. So if we want to change those kind of things, we're going to have to have more frequencies of routes. We're going to have to change it. We're going to have to agree to pay more for it because that's what it's going to take. The funding side of it is going to be, you know, a bigger thing. But again, I'm forced to operate within the funding that we have from the Duke endowment that we got because we don't use local tax dollars. So until our government changes that and we start using any local tax dollars to increase that, that will limit our ability to work on weekends, and that's going to limit our ability to run service after 6:30 in the evening to be able to take care of second shift workers and those type of things at these plants. We try to work with the Economic Development Department of Anderson County and the city to make sure that these folks in the business side know that these people are riding the buses, and if they need workers, they're going to have to kind of accommodate some of the times that they can be there and times that they can get there and get home. And that's a challenge for everybody. So, you know, there has to be conversation about expansion in the future because I think it's going to be needed and the desire of the people that living in your areas are going to want it.
Right. And I want to touch on that before we go, but Dan, I want to give you a chance. Obviously, Clemson is continuing to grow as a university and expand, and you guys are doing everything you can to meet the need now. But how are you looking towards the next 5 and 10 years? It sounds like the walkability and bikeability is an important component. I love how you said, you know, earlier, you know, you're trying to have more people use other means of coming into the university, whether it be public transit or walking or biking or whatever, rather than just parking their car, because there's only so much room for parking. And to be very honest, parking facilities are an incredible expense. So what are you guys doing, and what are some of your focuses as you look towards the next 5 years?
Absolutely, Dean. It's a great question. I mean, we've got to be thinking ahead. There is not one magic bullet that's going to solve this problem. It's going to be creating convenience, creating options for people. Some of the things we've done now that we'll continue to do is we've subsidized transit passes for employees. So what it would cost someone to drive down from CUI car down here, we've priced our permits for transit a lot less. So people are actually saving money by taking the bus, so incentivizing that. We have discounted park and ride lots that we're using. We're going to probably expand that. Our parking is expanding outside the university. We're trying to reward faculty, staff, and students for not bringing a car. Incentivization is something we have to work on. Something that's really nasty that people do, I mean, it's going to happen at some point, is congestion pricing. You know, we'll price the price of a permit so much that you're not going to even think twice. You're going to get on a bus, but the bus service has to be there to be able to support that. Some of the things that we've been working on that we're going to be expanding is technology. So real-time tracking of buses and being able to see the occupancy in the bus. So is the bus 50% full? Am I going to get on that bus? Where is the bus? Is it on time? So on-time performance is really important, but we're very transparent about where the bus system is. So we have an app at the university called My.Clemson where you can call up any route that we're involved with, including CATbus, to be able to see where buses are. Another thing that we're doing is parking sensors, real-time parking availability. So taking away the frustration of bringing a car to campus and knowing where parking is available and where it's not available. Trying to reduce that traffic in and around campus is really important. So we have a pilot program going on right now in one of our student lots with about 6 different permit types in there. So we're able to now to track what the availability is. And it's really, from our standpoint, imagining parking, looking at parking utilization, really brings a lot of data to the table on what we might be able to do differently. We do want to expand bike share. We have received grant money from both graduate student government and our IT student advisory board. We got $106,000 just donated to us to expand bike share. We're going to go with electric bikes. I know up in Greenville, they have similar program with B-Cycle. We're going to probably swap out eventually our mechanical bikes for e-bikes. So we're going to be looking at that. We're looking at scooters. Electric scooters are out there. We're trying to make them as safe as possible. I'm basically socializing that whole issue to the university to try and see if we can make scooter travel safer on campus. There's kids on campus right now just driving everywhere at high speeds. We have ways that the technology within those programs can actually throttle them down, effectively eliminate them from going to certain areas. So that's going to be another way to get around. And then finally, one of the things we're involved in right now is we're involved with a DOE grant for autonomous vehicles. So we're going to be looking at that over the next 3.5 years. We're basically going to be swapping out electric vehicles for some of the buses that we're operating on campus to evaluate the feasibility of them and the cost effectiveness of them. And will people actually get on them? We'll start out with safety drivers on them. We're going to be starting in a few months. It's going to be about a 3.5-year process. But we're excited about the possibility of being able to operate these on campus and eventually off campus as well.
And that's very timely and interesting. And Keith mentioned one of the biggest challenges right now is finding drivers. So having the autonomous vehicles at some point may eliminate that challenge, at least in a controlled setting like a university, probably is a better a place for that than maybe along 85 or 385 in some of our communities. Well, we certainly could go on with many other topics and expand on this, but I really appreciate all three of you. I think one of the big issues that the Mobility Alliance has tried to play a role in sharing with folks is just the value that mobility choices, and most especially in this case transit, plays in movement of people across the upstate region, and how can we collectively work to grow all of our systems so that things like connectivity that we talk about is easier. It's very hard to have connectivity when you're not meeting the needs within your own system, much less trying to connect with others. So growing all the systems so there can be greater connectivity, I think, is important, and growing that pie. We're pleased that transit is now in Greenwood County. We're working with Abbeville and Cherokee, and eventually, hopefully, Union and Lawrence. So all of our counties will have some type of public transit. But the reality is, and I know Clemson does not necessarily use public funds, but all the rest of our systems do. And so the money and resources, slicing that pie even greater is hard. So how do we grow the pie so there is more resources for everyone? So for our panelists, we appreciate it. For those of you in the audience, this is recorded, so we will be sharing, and we certainly welcome you sharing this with others who you think might be interested. We will have another in the Connecting the Dots series later in the fall, looking at Greenville and Spartanburg. We've looked kind of at the rest of the region. Now we're going to look at our larger systems in those two areas and how they are working to meet the needs of their residents. From a At the Top standpoint, we got some other virtual workshops this week, tomorrow, around creating a safer upstate, talking to public safety officers, and then our bi-weekly TAT chat on Thursday, where we're going to be talking to SCRA. For those, if you haven't already made plans, our big event next Monday, Blues, Brews, and Barbecue out at the GSP Airport. We're in a big tent out there, so it's an outdoor event. We're doing everything we can to make sure it's safe, and I encourage you to join us for that. So with that, I want to thank Dan and Heather and Keith especially, and again, thanks to everybody for being with us, and be safe and have a great day.
Great. Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Thanks a lot. Take care.